Hey everybody. We'll start out with Name That Tune from 92.3, The Fox here in El Paso. Jack DePrimo, first on, again, this is a record, many days in a row. Thanks, Jack, for joining us. So what I'm doing right now is just playing 92.3 FM in El Paso. I didn't choose the song chose us. Hey Storm, hope everyone is good in Ohio. Tiam, good to see you. Hope you and Grace are good. Good to see everybody. Walker, we have DC/North Carolina represented. Anybody gonna name the artist or the tune? DeMarcus. There's Lisa D. We're gonna have Lisa on really soon. We've got Cleveland in the house, Miami in the house. Nimco, I'll get to that. Hello, Portland, Nevada, the Beatles, the Valley, RGV's in the house. Lisa D, guest Prince. Lisa D, you are right in spirit. That's Jethro Tull, Aqualung. Song I haven't heard in a while, but that's the beauty of the radio. You never know what's going to happen. So I'll be very brief in my introduction because I really want to get to our guest, Lisa Degliantoni, who is one of the most amazing people that I've known over the course of my life. Knew her going back more than 20 years. We met in New York. My uncle was good friends with her brother, and they worked together in a music studio in Manhattan. Her brother was in soul coughing, an accomplished human being in his own right. And they set Lisa and I up, and we ended up becoming really good friends. And I had some role, along with Mike Stevens, who was our guest from Springfield the other day, in connecting her with her current husband, David Ford, with whom she lives and with whom she runs an art gallery in Evanston. And so today we're going to be talking about art in the time of coronavirus. And that's actually, I think, a podcast series that Lisa's running right now. So looking forward to hearing from her. A couple of thoughts. A few of you have mentioned Bernie Sanders in your comments. We want to congratulate Senator Sanders, his campaign, and all of his extraordinarily fierce volunteers for their movement, the effort that they produced, and the push for the better for the United States, whether it is healthcare or affordable higher education or economic justice or criminal justice or climate. Bernie Sanders has been at the forefront of so many of these issues. And I know that he will continue to be at the forefront in the United States Senate and in the effort to ensure that our nominee, who it looks like will be Joe Biden, defeats Donald Trump in November and then becomes the most progressive president we've ever had. And that will be possible only if Bernie Sanders, his movement, and his supporters are part of that election victory in November and on demanding the accountability and the change from the next president of the United States. So our gratitude to everyone in that movement for the race that Senator Sanders has run, that all of you ran, and for what you are going to commit to doing going forward. I know what it's like to run one of these races. I know what it's like to come up short in one of these races, as do the folks who were part of our team, our staff, our supporters. It's not a good feeling, and know that this is a really tough moment for everyone right now. But again, we are so grateful for the effort that you've made, the change that you've already produced, and the change that you will produce going forward. Some quick good news. Let me plug a link in here to this comment. See if I can get this. No, didn't work. But I was going to plug in a link to the El Paso Food Bank. You all have been so generous. More than $30,000 has been raised from these Instagram lives and from the email that we sent out that so many of you responded to. In fact, more people responded to the email from outside of Texas than from in Texas, and gave to the food bank here in El Paso, Texas, $30,000 raised individually, $5, $10, $25 at a time, to make sure that we can feed people at an historic moment of need in El Paso and in this country. We haven't seen the likes of this since the Great Depression, and it just gives me so much pride and makes me feel so hopeful to know that so many of you stepped up, though these are tough times for you and your families, to help those who are truly in need here in El Paso right now. And so on behalf of this community, on behalf of El Pasoans Fighting Hunger, the name of our food bank, I just want to say thank you all for that. And then one of the guests that we had at the start of the week, Jacqueline Westman, you remember her, she's running Project PPE. She's not just getting pissed off and frustrated at the president and the administration for not producing the personal protective equipment that keeps our nurses and doctors safe. She's actually producing it in a garment factory in LA and then sending shipments of it to hospitals and clinics in New York, in Arizona, in California. And when I reached out to her yesterday and said our food bank is running out of face masks for the volunteers, she said, I've got an order of 200 face masks coming your way. They will be cloth. They will have some great safety health coating on them, and I assume they're going to be washable and reusable. And so, Jacqueline, thank you for doing that. What a great story. And Jacqueline told me that you all raised $5,000 for Project PPE when she was on the program on Monday. So kudos to you all. Thank you so much. Lastly, in good news from our friends, Degliantoni, who you'll remember was one of our first guests, working on the front lines as a physician in the Metro DC area, seeing an extraordinary crushing caseload. He and his fellow doctors and frontline medical workers knew that we were all volunteering at the food bank here in El Paso and sent a shipment of gloves and other PPE to us here in El Paso to make sure that we're safe. How fucking cool is Degliantoni, who is on the front lines of this and has more than enough to worry about right now, heard about what we were doing and sent that shipment out. So in these really dark days, in really tough times, we've got to elevate and highlight these stories where people are stepping up and just doing the right thing, sometimes against extraordinary odds. So for all of you healthcare workers, from the cleaning staff to the nurses to the doctors, thank you for what you're doing right now. My sister is a nurse, an ER nurse here in El Paso, and I spoke to her today, and I just know how tough and taxing and grinding that job is and how dangerous that job is right now. Thank you all. To our grocery store workers, the folks stocking the shelves, those ringing up our purchases, probably far too often not able to keep that 6-foot distance from those customers. Thank you for doing that. You ensure that we can feed ourselves and that we're going to be okay in our homes as we've been told to shelter in place. You make that possible. We are all grateful to you. To our police officers and firefighters and EMS and first responders and everybody's job who is essential at this moment and doesn't have the luxury of staying home and staying secluded and isolated. Thank you. Please keep it up. Know that we are grateful and that we are with you. Before I get to Lisa, a couple of quick things. We always try to start with the numbers to make sure that we're aware of what's happening around the world, what's happening in the US, what's happening in Texas. We're just at 1.5 million global cases reported. That's the operative word. We can only begin to imagine how many hundreds of thousands or millions of cases have not been reported so far. But this is apples to apples, day in and day out. This is what's been reported so far, I believe, through the World Health Organization. 87,000 deaths, 87,000 human beings, moms, dads, brothers, sisters, have lost their lives so far that we know of. This is all that's been reported. In the United States, we're just under 420,000 cases and over 14,000 deaths. Again, 14,000 of our fellow Americans, human beings, have died, and very often have died very lonely deaths without their families or loved ones by their bedside. Terrifying deaths where their lungs and their organs are collapsing and closing down and shutting off. Let's keep them in our thoughts and in our prayers, and their families who survived them, who are having a very difficult time mourning their passing, cannot go to funerals, cannot visit their bedside, are having to grieve sometimes by themselves alone in their homes. Tests, more than 2 million tests are out there or have been conducted so far. It's better than zero, but it's nowhere close to what we need in a country of 327 million people. Until we test, we don't know what the real numbers are. Until we test, we don't know how to isolate those who have coronavirus, trace their contacts, and make sure that this stops spreading. Texas, 9,500 cases, 180 deaths so far. Again, that's to the best of our knowledge. We're not reporting the full numbers because we're not testing the number of people that we need to test. One last thing, and I've called this to your attention every show that we've had this week, the number of Black Americans who are dying of coronavirus. The graph that I'm showing you here, you may not be able to read the numbers, but it's of deaths in Louisiana. The very long blue bar is the number of African Americans who have died, or the percentage of African Americans who have died in Louisiana from coronavirus. Over 70%. White Louisianans under 30%, even though African Americans represent only a third of the population in Louisiana. It is the exact same thing in Chicago that we're seeing right now, thanks to Mayor Lightfoot for drawing attention to that. But it is not unrelated to this. Again, you may not be able to read this, but of those, this is, again, data from Louisiana, of those who died of COVID-19, here's some of the underlying conditions who are African American. Here's some of the underlying conditions that they have: hypertension, diabetes, kidney disease, obesity, cardiac disease, pulmonary complications, etc., etc. Point being that this is not anything new in America. This is a function of the foundational, endemic, systemic racism that has defined the American experience for Black Americans for as long as there has been an America. And so lack of access to health care, lack of access to economic equality and justice, disproportionate impact of the criminal justice system. We could go through a long list, a litany of reasons that have produced these circumstances. Right now, Senators Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Congresswoman Presley, and others have proposed a bill that would mandate that we have Health and Human Services releasing national data on COVID-19 by race, because only then will we be able to inform the policies and programming to address this disparate level of death within the African American community by Black Americans right now. So I want to make sure I got that to you. Last thing I promised before Lisa comes on: 3 things that we want from the government right now, and that the government is uniquely capable of providing. Number 1, the tests. Number 2, the personal protective equipment to protect our frontline healthcare workers, the PPE. And last, the ventilators for those of us who have COVID-19 and need the help with breathing to be able to stay alive. Those are the 3 things that our government has yet to be able to produce and perform to, that we need. And so when you're talking to your member of Congress, your U.S. Senator, when you're reaching out to the White House or this administration, those are the 3 things that we want: the tests, the PPE, and the ventilators. All right, Lisa Degliantoni, I'm going to try to get you on this live stream so we can make the most of our time with you. Here we go. Lisa D, coming up right now.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Whoa. Hi, Beto.
Are you in the Polish meat market?
I'm currently in the Polish meat shop, and I'm going to wave a lot to people because our windows are on the street. So I'm going to be a little distracted, but I'm going to try to focus on you the best that I can.
The Polish meat shop in Evanston is the art gallery that you and Dave now run and have events in, exhibits, bring the community together. How the hell do you pull this off at a time where we're not allowed to actually be in physical proximity with one another?
Good question. So you will see behind me in the windows, there are these apparatus sort of pole situations with art hanging down from them. We've essentially moved the white walls of our gallery to the street. So now there are 7 windows that Dave Ford has installed with art on them, because of course we had 2 artists who were slotted to go live in April: David Gista, who's stuck in Portugal, and Kathy Halper, and both of them made this new body of work of landscapes to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And it broke my heart to be like, sorry, you don't get an exhibit, which is something that is happening to artists around the world right now. They're offline, right? So Dave Ford, in his ever brilliance, was like, oh, I'm just going to install these basic apparatus that are going to put all the art in the windows. So we have little placards with information, and now the walker buyers can see it. It's very, very nice.
I love that. And so you're still going to have the show. You're still going to welcome people to come see the artwork. They're going to choose their own hours whenever they can walk by. They're going to keep more than 6 feet distance between themselves and the other patrons of the gallery. It reminds me of, there are some people who are putting teddy bears in their windows, and then parents can take their kids around and do a, kind of a tour of the teddy bears. Yesterday was our mutual friend Janine's birthday, Janine and Charlie. And so a bunch of us gathered in our cars in the parking lot at UTEP, not too far from their house. And then we did a parade of cars down the street. And you'll never believe this, but the Cummings, Chris and Michelle, were the most creative. They made this gigantic banner. They dressed up in matching outfits. I don't know if this is legal or not, but their youngest son was skateboarding attached to a rope from the back of their car, but there was nobody else on the street. So I think that was okay. But
he was wearing a Dave hat. I do recall.
He was wearing a Dave hat. Yes.
Dave hat, right.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. I saw that video. That's totally illegal. I love that you guys did that. And I think a lot of people, are being incredibly creative about how they're connecting right now.
So tell me what's going on in Evanston and in Chicago. I just cited some of the statistics about the disproportionate number of deaths from Black Chicagoans relative to white Chicagoans and relative to their population. What are you seeing in Evanston? Is Evanston far enough from Chicago that it's two completely different experiences, or one metro area, same things going down?
No, we share a city border of Howard Avenue, and parts of Evanston are much more urban, in air quotes, than other parts of Evanston. It is much more suburban. We've got a very pristine lakefront. We have a very beautiful, hi there, friend, a little guy waving. Oh, you were feeding the chickens. Thank you. Sorry about that interruption. We have chickens that all the kids feed with little grass through the door. It's a major COVID locked in the house entertainment for all the neighbors.
Can you show us the chickens?
No, I can't. They're down the street.
Okay.
I can show you the chickens. But there are certain parts of Evanston that are much more Chicago-ish. But the Metra and the CTA, public transportation, go through it. But it is a massive concern. The volume of Black deaths is a massive concern, not only for Chicago, but Atlanta, Oakland. The numbers are, my friend Denise Barreto, who's on this feed today, was making me aware of this yesterday. It is incredible that the amount of inequity that is being revealed, that people keep using the language like this is a common thread for all of us and we're all suffering together. And it turns out we're really not, especially people who are still working. If you go to my Valley grocery store, it's not a bunch of white checkers. It's not a bunch of it's all Black kids who work there. They're all being exposed. They can't afford to stay home in the shelter in place. They don't work from home. And so these people who are running our society are the ones who are going to sustain the most damage, I think. And that's why we're seeing these outrageous numbers. And Chicago the brilliant thing is we have Lightfoot, who's an amazing leader, and Pritzker, who's an amazing leader. We also, our mayor in Evanston is a disaster preparedness guy, Mayor Steve Haggerty. So he's been incredible. And this town and this region is on lockdown.
What's that like for your family right now? You have teenagers, you have an 18-year-old, ours are 13, 11, and 9. So we have some pretty decent control over their lives. I'm imagining that's a different scenario when you're 18.
Yeah.
No comment?
I was hoping we'd leave that till the end of the show. After I finish my Whiskey Wednesday celebration, I feel a little bit looser. And
I'm doing Wednesday wine with you right now.
Wednesday wine. Oh,
yeah.
Rats. That's
Cheers
right.
to you.
I forgot.
Yeah.
Cheers, wine start. Well, I saw you and Mike having a beer, and I was like, that's not fair. I mean, the younger kid.
That's a lot of whiskey, by the way.
I know, because the ice cube melted because you talked for so long before I went live, but it's fine. The younger one, who's a freshman, is like, this is awesome. I'm just going to make art and hang out in my room. The older one, who's a senior in high school. I mean, I was gray before the freaking shutdown,
Right.
But this, he's going off the rails. I mean, I hate to be honest. He's totally going off the rails. He's inspired me to start a new podcast series called You Good. I'm going to start collecting stories from people about the insanity of having kids coming home from college locked in the house, kids who are just discovering beer and girlfriends locked in the house. I mean, we've had myriad infractions, and it's causing me and Dave Ford a lot of heartache. But in Miles' mind, in his defense, he's like, hey, the only people dying are like old people. So if I get COVID, who cares? And I'm like, no, that's not a roommate that I can have. That's not a thing. So it's been tricky. Tonight, we're going to try to watch a family movie together. Stealing.
What are we thinking?
We're thinking Parasite. I think Dave and
Great
I
family movie.
Theater.
Great, light stuff.
The mutual masturbation scene is going to be great to watch with the both of them. You know, that's going to be fun. But like, I feel like.
Thanks for saying that on the Instagram Live. You know, at least Mike had the presence of mind not to say MM on the. Well, anyhow.
You say the F word, I can say MM anyway.
That's true.
I think they should see it. I love that movie. I'm sorry.
Okay, I've got a big picture question for you, and then if we have time, so take 4 to 5 minutes to answer this big picture question. I've been thinking about this. I want to get your take. Hopefully, we're going to all get through this, right? And we're going to minimize the number of cases, minimize the number of deaths, because you're going to talk your 18-year-old son into staying at home. None of us will leave the house. We produce enough tests and PPE to protect people and to isolate people who are infected. And we come out of this in 4 or 5 or 6 months. I don't know how long it's going to take. How will life be different on a permanent basis going forward? So one example, you have moved the art from the white walls into the windows so that people can pass by the gallery and see the art there. What will change in how you talk a lot about art and community in your work? How are those things going to change going forward, or anything else that you want to?
God, so much is going to change.
Speculate on.
So one thing is, for people who are interested in like the mechanics of the art world and like what is Chelsea going to look like, what is the Venice Biennale going to look like, Jerry Saltz has written some incredible pieces for New York Magazine about how this is just going to blow up and it's never going to be the same. I have this theory, and I've been honing it for about 4 years, that our culture is making a pendulum shift back to the maker movement, but like way back to when there were mentors in the Da Vinci art setting, and people were learning how to make shoes and tan leather. And we're going back to a movement where people are going to be honored and celebrated for working with their hands. Not just because it's trendy and cool, and not just because people are being socially and economically responsible and they want to know who their money is going to, but literally because people want to know the source of the making. And I have this feeling that the artists and artisans, so people who are making the bespoke mayonnaise in Brooklyn, but also the people who are making the whiskey down the street from me at Few Distillery, those people are going to lead us into this new economy in a way that I feel accountants are not going to, or I don't want to disparage too many people, but like, you know, bankers are not going to. I feel that artists are going to set the precedent for honoring a new level of making and community building and sharing and teaching that they haven't been able to have the opportunity to do in this like uber capitalistic journey that we have been on in our country for the last 10 years. I feel like there's a shift.
So it's interesting. So our consumerism, our need or desire to buy all the time has been radically interrupted. All the stores are closed except for, in Texas, the gun stores, and in California, the weed stores. But basically, you can get groceries, and that's about the only reason you can leave your home to go buy something. And we, as you said, we've got an economy that's basically premised on you and I buying shit all the time. That's what drives growth in our economy. It drives our trading relationships with China, where we buy the phone that you are showing right now. So you think that it might not just be an interruption. We might change economically how we're connected to one another, making our own stuff, or at least knowing where stuff is made and valuing that a little bit more. This is, maybe just a small example, but I've seen so many of like the local bread makers in El Paso, or the tortilla makers, or restaurants that specialize in something that they make that you could otherwise buy in a store, advertising on Instagram and saying, hey, all of our bakers are still in, and we're making great bread, come in and get that. And who knows, but I like that idea that this might change permanently in the direction of valuing where stuff is made and who makes it, and knowing that. And then also maybe having some fucking recognition that you mentioned those who are working at the bodega or the deli or the supermarket right now, making in Texas potentially $7.25 an hour, because that's how low our minimum wage is in Texas, that these are the folks that we've asked to man the front lines right now so that we can feed ourselves and be okay. It's kind of laid bare some of this stuff. I hope that changes a lot of the economic injustice that we're seeing right now. Interesting. And how do you think what you're doing is going to change? Bringing the community together. Are people going to still want to gather in your gallery space and look at art together?
People are going to want to connect so hard. So this whole 7-year journey of this Evanston Made organization that we've been building strictly with the mission to connect Evanston artists to the public has just grown into this amazing 300 member organization where artists are just dying to meet the person down the street and get to know them. The local person is dying to collect Evanston art. And I feel like there was this, we were riding this wave of like membership and member mixers, and we were doing professional development series, and then this shutdown happens. And I think people are going to yearn for connecting authentically so much more than before. I think not that people were taking it for granted, but now there's going to be this yearning, and I think we're going to have to take to the streets in the summer only. We're going to have to be in bigger spaces, but it's going to be more valued after this is over.
Does Tinder go away? Because I think right now courtship has probably changed, right? You can't just swipe, connect, and hook up. And you've got to, you're probably writing, if not letters, longer text messages to the person that you're interested in. There's probably something a little deeper in the, the quest or the connection.
Tinder will never go away. Is that a question from one of your, is that something that came up in the feed? Because this
I would like to say somebody else asked that. No, that was
I
me.
would like that. I think that this feed and watching these comments come through, this is like a one-man show of reenactment. It is insane what people say on your feed. It's really great. And I'm not going to read any of them out loud because you're the curator, but Tinder's never going to go away. And honestly, I think people right now are getting forced not only to know one another better, but themselves better. And that's probably causing a lot of pain. My good friend is a therapist, and I get a lot of secondhand stories from her about the pain people are in. The people who were cheating right before this thing broke, and now they can't hump their neighbor. What do? You're freaking out. Miles is freaking out because he's 18, but imagine if you were having an affair with your neighbor and now you're like on lockdown and you can't. There's all kinds of things that people are being deprived of right now. It's amazing. And I'm interested in that vein of falling from grace and human suffering that is going to come out of this, that is just going to force people to love each other a little bit more and get to know themselves a little bit more. I know that sounds dark, but it's going to be good.
Yes or no, do you think creativity will rise in quarantine from Jack, our
Absolutely,
honorary
Jack.
co-host?
Yes, Jack DePrimo. I love that he's always asking great questions. I think that people are, I've heard from a lot of artists that they're like, I'm in pain. I don't want to make, I don't want to get in front of the canvas right now. I have heard from a ton of people who are like, I have so many ideas. I'm finally giving myself permission to be in the studio. They're writing more, painting more, singing more. They're sharing more, because how else people are on Zoom doing virtual studio tours right now. They're producing bodies of work that they're finally going to pull a Marie Kondo on their freaking studio, and now they're going to make a ton more stuff. I think there's going to be a renaissance, as it were, of lots more work.
No humping your neighbor.
Don't hump your neighbor. Beto, don't touch your face. Look at these comments. Yes.
I won't.
Hands off.
So,
Hands off.
Lisa,
Hands
we got to
off.
wrap up, but I think
on,
you have
hold on,
been
just-
one of, if not the most popular
Wait,
guest.
hold on. Do you hear that? Oh my God. I'm getting draped. Have you heard about this? It's like a new Instagram live thing. I'm getting draped. I had to do one thing. I'm so sorry.
That's awesome. Thanks for doing this.
So much for doing this, Beto.
We're gonna have you back, maybe every day if that's cool with you, for like 5 minutes.
I would love to every day for 5 minutes talk to you. I was also going to do Beto trivia for all of your fans and just be like, oh, true or false. Beto introduced me to my husband, but you already said it. And I was going to give away a free sticker to anyone who got the question right. I'll just give it to Jack. He seems to be a big fan.
Oh, well, I love seeing you. And I can't wait till we can see you in person.
Yay. I love seeing you. Say hi to the kids. Sorry that I couldn't get the chickens on next time. Very next
time. All right. Gracias,
Thanks,
Lisa.
Beto.
Bye-bye.
Adios.
All right, Lisa D, everybody. I'm going to sign off, but a couple things. One, tomorrow we're going to have Congresswoman Veronica Escobar on, who, among other things, might be able to answer our questions about the $2 trillion relief package that came out of Congress and what the next relief bill might look like. And is also just another amazing person, fun guest. Looking forward to the conversation. And very lastly, I was going to try to give you our credit roll, but it's not really showing up the way I want it to. Christy for the graphics, Elizabeth for the CDC data, and Kano as our producer. I want to thank you all for putting this show on. We will see you tomorrow with Veronica Escobar. Thanks, everybody.